lack of affordable and quality grocery in the area. That's a problem to me. You shouldn't have to dodge potholes every other mile going from home to work.
Amen.
And while we're talking about home to work, we should be supporting small businesses so that the people who live in our communities have an opportunity to work in the community, so that the dollars can return to our communities. This is why we're running. So if you want to see change in your communities, I'm asking you to vote. But here's the thing. Every year seems like the access to fair elections becomes harder and harder to obtain. And it seems as though every time we realize our voting rights, our voting power, some routine check causes some type of purge to hit our communities. Listen, I've been on this ground fighting every day for the past 2 years, making sure that the issues that matter to Augusta matter to folks every single day. Every single day, people. The issues that we don't hear about every day come to the forefront. But it's important to understand that if you don't have access to fair elections, if you're being taken off of voting rolls, if you're being denied access to voting because you don't have the proper identification, that is a problem. And across our state, one person has solidified themselves as being champion, as being a champion, as being the champion for voting rights across our state. And listen, she didn't just start this fight right now. I told her in the back, I said, you remember the first time I met you, I was much younger. She said, yeah, and that means I was much younger too, so stop telling people that. But the first time I met this individual, she came to Augusta to talk about voting rights. She came to Augusta because the governor wanted to take Richmond County schools and create an education czar that only answered to him. We fought that and we won that battle. It was because of the fight from our minority leader at the time, Stacey Abrams, that voters had the opportunity to go to the polls and be heard and use the voice that the Constitution gives us. And we understand that every day these rights are at risk. And we're here today because we have a champion who is championing those voting rights. And just recently, here in Augusta, we took it to the Secretary of State's office when they wanted to purge close to 6,000 people from the voting rolls in Richmond County. We stood and we fought and we won. So I am thankful. I am thankful today, not only just to be a candidate for this office, because I believe that the progress that we're trying to make goes well far beyond what we do on May 19th. What we do on May 19th decides the future of our communities. It decides whether or not businesses stay in our county or leave our county. But we need to make sure that before we even get to the polls, that we have access to those polls, to that poll. That we have access to free elections. That we have access to fair elections. That we don't have to make sure that folks aren't tampering with our voices by way of the ballot box. And so I would like to just introduce to you someone who has been fighting on our behalf ever since I remember. Ever since that first meeting I had with her. Ever since she announced her governor's campaign. I remember Stacey Abrams as a fighter. I know Stacey Abrams as a fighter. I've watched her fight, and I followed her in this fight. And I'm glad that she's here today to talk to us more about the fight. So would you all please help me introduce and welcome to our great city of Augusta, Georgia, our leader, Stacey Abrams.
Thank you, Jordan, for such a kind introduction. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, for making him. And thank you to Reverend Woods for opening Tabernacle, but more importantly, opening up the conversation about justice. Because fundamentally, that's what we're talking about. In 2018, I did not become the governor of Georgia. And in the 10-day period between November 6th, Election Day, yeah, I felt the same way, baby. In between November 6th, Election Day, and November 16th, my non-concession day, I really had to think about what I wanted to do next. Because you see, when you're running for office, your focus is intense, and all you can think about is getting to that day. But I was raised by civil rights activists. My mom and dad were involved in the civil rights movement as teenagers in Mississippi. I grew up in Gulfport. I like to say I was raised in Mississippi and came of age in Georgia. My dad was arrested helping register people to vote when he was 16. My mom was doing the same work. She was just smart enough not to get caught. But they raised me to understand that the work that you do is about the work. It's It's not about the title. And while I was vying for the title of governor, I wanted to do the work of being governor. And so my job in that 10-day period was to figure out, if I didn't get the title, what work could I continue to do? Because I don't believe in just being angry or being outraged. I believe in taking action. That's how I was raised. I was raised by people who used to take us to go and vote with them every single election, and there were 6 of us. We looked like make way for ducklings when they would go and voting booths. But they wanted us to see what they did. They wanted us to understand that even though we live on the poor black street in the middle class side of town, so we get done to the good school, not the great school, they wanted us to understand that their voices mattered. They wanted us to see that even though we had times when we had no running water and the lights got cut off, that we had a responsibility to think not just about our house, but our neighborhood. Not just our neighborhood, but our city. Not just our city, but our state. And when my parents moved us here to Georgia, they made sure we understood the legacy of the state of Georgia, the civil rights movement. I stand here today because I believe in the work we can do here in Georgia. That work cannot be done unless we have the power that we are supposed to be guaranteed through the U.S. Constitution. You see, the Constitution has been amended 3 times to remind America about the right to vote. The 13th Amendment, which gave us citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which made that citizenship voting power for black men, but not black women. The 19th Amendment, which finally gave the right to vote to women, but because we had Jim Crow, black women still didn't really get to participate. And then the 26th Amendment, which said that if you were 18 and old enough to die for our country, you were old enough to vote in our country. The 15th, the 19th, and the 26th Amendment have been opportunities for us to reform the original promise of America. But the problem is that every time we reform the promise, we keep telling folks in our states they get to decide who gets that promise kept. One of the challenges of America is that we delegate to the states the power of elections. And we live in a state that does not believe that every American voice should be heard. That is why we are fighting. That is why I acknowledge the legal sufficiency of that election, but I will never concede that the system that administered the 2018 election is fair, because as long as people's voices weren't heard, that election is not fair. But hear me clearly, there is nothing I will do this year, next year, there is nothing I will ever do that will change the outcome of the 2018 election, and that's not my intention. What is, what happened, happened. But what can be is where we have to focus. Because the right to vote is our power in a democracy. It is the only power in a democracy. The ability to choose who our leaders are, to tell them what we expect them to do, and to fire them if we decide they've not done enough. That is the power of democracy. That is the power of our nation. But when that power can be taken away by use it or lose it laws, Georgia is one of only 9 states in America that says as a matter of law, your failure to vote is a reason to take your vote away. I don't lose my freedom of religion when I oversleep and don't make it to church, Reverend Woods. And I don't lose my Second Amendment right when I don't go hunting on Saturdays. Why can I lose my right to vote because I chose not to? That is the flaw in our system. And in the state of Georgia, last month, they started a process to purge 300,000 people from the rolls. But because of fair fight, we stood up and said, this is not right. We had people from around the country making calls. We got 4,500 people to call and get themselves back on the rolls. And then we took them to court because it's not enough just to be loud. You got to fight. And when we took them to court, the Secretary of State admitted he made 22,000 mistakes. 22,000 errors. Stealing a citizen's right to vote is not an error. It is an abomination, and it should not happen in the United States of America, and it cannot happen again in Georgia. Having a fair fight means that you don't lose polling places. According to an AJC analysis, because of the 214 polling places that closed under the administration of Secretary of State Brian Kemp, between 50 and 60,000 Georgians lost their right to vote. Because it's not enough to say that you have the right to vote if you don't have the ability to get there. And they will say, well, just vote by mail. Well, when thousands of ballots never show up and even thousands more get rejected, then you do not have the right to vote in Georgia. But the right is not the reason I do this work. I do the work for the people and for the lives they want to lead. We do the work because policy matters. Because electing someone isn't enough if they don't do the work you elected them to do. And I believe in the work. And I believe the work cannot simply be electing someone as president of the United States. It can't simply be focusing on federal elections when local elections decide most of our lives. District attorney is a powerful job. It is the administration of justice in our communities. Whether we are the state that has the 9th highest incarceration rate and the single highest rate of probation and parole begins with our district attorney. And as long as you are on probation or parole in the state of Georgia, you do not have the right to vote. Georgia has the single highest number of people, black people, who cannot vote, not because they haven't served their time, but because their time doesn't end. That is a solvable problem, but only if we have DAs who believe in the people we're trying to solve the problem for. And it's about judges. In the state of Georgia, we vote for our judges because justice is administered by our judges. And if we ignore that part on our ballot, then we are ignoring the future of our communities. People don't take themselves to jail. What happens is we have a system, and if we don't participate in that system will chew us up and spit us out. We have to pay attention all the way down the ballot. And in the state of Georgia, the most powerful community leader outside of the governor and the state legislature is your county commissioners. By Constitution, they have the responsibility of administering your tax dollars, setting the needs of the people in front of their own. And your county commissioners have the constitutional responsibility to serve their community. Folks have asked why Fair Fight has started endorsing in local races, and that's because that's where the power is. And I don't believe in just chasing titles, I believe in chasing power. And the power to improve the lives of Georgians begins in our local elections. On May 19th, you're going to make decisions. In November, you're going to make decisions. And if you don't show up, you've made your decision that what's happening is okay. And I don't believe anyone who showed up here tonight believes that's right. But what I want to ask you is, why aren't you here with somebody else? Because no matter whose name is on the ballot, our lives are on the line. And I am here because I believe in a fair fight for all of Georgia. A fair fight here in Augusta. A fair fight in Burke County, where I was a few hours ago listening to black farmers who had their land stolen and their lives ruined because the people they elected do not see them once they get to office. I'm going to be going to visit with my friends, Representative Gloria Frazier, Representative Sheila Clark Nelson, because I believe that our state legislators need to have the power to protect us from budget cuts that would empty our communities and fill our jails. But those are choices that we make when we decide to vote and when we don't vote. When we come places alone or when we bring people with them, because people need to be told their voices matter. Everyone in this room, someone told you your voice mattered. You may not remember when it happened, but it did. But we know that 62% of the people who don't vote have never been asked to register, have rarely been asked to vote. And if you tell someone they don't matter long enough, they start to believe you. I'm here tonight because I believe in a fair fight. And I know in Augusta, we have the chance to not only have a fair fight, but to have a win. And for fair fight for Georgia, I ask you to not show up alone. Check your registration, get your friends to check their registration, and if they look at you cross-eyed, make sure they understand they need to register. Treat it like bringing someone to church with you. They may come kicking and screaming, but they'll leave filled with the Spirit. I will close with this. I've spent the last year being the best loser I know. Thank you. I'm not sure how I feel about people clapping for being a loser, but that's good. But I say it because of this. Not only was I able to launch Fair Fight, I was able to launch an organization called Fair Count, because we need the census to be accurate. Jordan spoke about a food desert, being unable to get to groceries. Well, I'll tell you this about the U.S. Census. In our country, because we do not complete the census at the rates we need to, communities like Augusta, like District 1, get left behind. I've been working through Fair Count with a number of census leaders, and what we heard is this. There's a community that had been trying to get a grocery store for years. And every time they tried to get that grocery store, they were told no, they didn't have the population. Well, one year they did everything. They did all the things they needed to do. They had the money on the table, but they got the letter saying you've been rejected again. And when they found out was that they were rejected because of 40 people. Because they were missing 40 people because they didn't hit the cutoff number to even be considered by the corporation to put their company there, to put their grocery store there. But the problem was they had more than 40 folks. They had hundreds of people who just didn't fill out the census because no one asked them, because they thought it was going to hurt them. They thought somebody was going to use it against them. And because of that, they couldn't find the food they needed. They had to go grocery shopping at a liquor store. We can change America. We can change Georgia. We can change Augusta if we show up in the 2020 census. We have to show up and be seen. Because every time we don't show up, Georgia loses roughly $400 million that we can't afford, because it's not money that comes out of the wealthy parts of town. It's money that never makes it to District 1 and District 9. It's money that doesn't make it to the communities that need it the most. We have to have a fair fight, but we also have to have a fair count. And if we have a fair count in 2020, and we have a fair fight in 2020, then we will have a new Georgia in 2021, and that's the mission that I want. Thank you so much for being here.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Are y'all fired up? Yeah. Are you ready to